Imagine going on a hike and thinking, this will be a nice relaxing day. Then, a giant boulder falls and basically says, absolutely not. That's exactly what happened to Aron Ralston. He was trapped in a remote canyon with his arm pinned under a massive rock. No one knew where he was. No one was coming to help. He had a little food, a little water, and a problem that got worse every hour. At first, he thought he'd be free in minutes. 5 days later, he was still trapped, and the decision he made next would become one of the most unbelievable survival stories ever recorded. In April 2003, Aron Ralston went hiking in Blue John Canyon, Utah. He was experienced, athletic, and loved exploring difficult places. The canyon was beautiful, narrow walls, smooth rock, and almost no other people around. For Aron, this was fun. For future Aron, this was a terrible decision. As he climbed down a narrow section of the canyon, he grabbed a large boulder for support. Suddenly, the rock shifted. Before he could react, it dropped and pinned his right arm against the canyon wall. He yanked his arm. Nothing. He pushed against the rock. Nothing. He changed positions and tried again. Still nothing. That was the moment he realized this wasn't a minor problem. He was completely trapped. At first, Aron stayed calm. He believed he could free himself if he tried hard enough. He spent hours pulling, twisting, and pushing with all his strength. Imagine arguing with a rock for 3 straight hours and the rock keeps winning. As the sun began to set, the canyon grew colder. Aron looked at his supplies, a small amount of food and less than a liter of water. Then he remembered something terrifying. He hadn't told anyone exactly where he was going. That meant if rescuers started looking for him, they wouldn't even know which canyon to search. For the first time, he understood that this could become a fight for survival. Day 2 was worse. Aron shouted into the canyon, hoping another hiker might hear him. No answer. He used a small multi-tool to chip away at the rock. The tool barely scratched it. By day 3, his water was almost gone. The canyon was silent except for wind and insects. No helicopters, no footsteps, no rescue team. To stay focused, Aron began recording video messages for his family. He talked about his life, his memories, and what he wanted people to know if he didn't survive. Think about how serious that is. Most of us record videos because we found a funny meme. Aron was recording goodbye messages. And then a horrible thought entered his mind. What if the only way out is to remove my arm? He tried to ignore the idea, but the longer he stayed trapped, the more realistic it became. By day 4, Aron was severely dehydrated. He had almost no water left. His lips were cracked, his body was weak, and the cold nights were making everything harder. He continued trying every possible escape method. He used ropes. He shifted his body. He pushed with his legs. Nothing worked. At one point, he carved his name and a possible date of death into the canyon wall. That's when the situation became truly real. He was preparing for the possibility that he would never leave that canyon alive. On the morning of day 5, he noticed something important. The position of his arm meant that if he could break the bones, he might be able to free himself. It was a terrible realization, but it was also the first real plan that had a chance of working. After nearly 5 days trapped under the boulder, Aron made the decision that would make headlines around the world. Using his small multi-tool, he broke the bones in his trapped arm. Then he cut through the remaining tissue and freed himself. It was painful, exhausting, and incredibly dangerous. But staying trapped meant almost certain death. And here's the unbelievable part. After freeing himself, he still had to escape the canyon. He climbed out with one arm, then he hiked through the desert looking for help. Imagine surviving 5 days trapped under a rock, amputating your own arm, and then thinking, okay, now I guess I should go for a hike. Eventually, Aron encountered a family hiking in the area. They immediately realized he was in serious condition and helped call for rescue. A helicopter soon arrived and transported him to safety. Doctors were amazed he had survived. Between the dehydration, blood loss, exposure, and exhaustion, the odds were against him. But Aron's determination had kept him alive long enough to escape. Aron Ralston's story became one of the most famous survival stories in history. A movie was later made about his experience, but the real story is just as incredible. He survived because he refused to give up even when every option seemed impossible. A giant boulder trapped him for 5 days. Most people would have lost hope. Aron found a way out. And honestly, if a rock tried that on me, I'd probably start apologizing to it and asking if we could work something out. Subscribe for more real stories that sound completely impossible, but actually happened.